I think there's a very good discussion to have about whether or not death metal has become stale. I want to preface this by saying I'm not referring to bands that are pre-existing from like melodic or technical or OG death metal that are still making material today, because I don't think that they have the same expectations that newer bands have in terms of either reinventing the wheel or taking the genre in an interesting direction. They paved the way, they did their time, they helped this genre become what it is. They're not expected to do that now. Every genre always has the kind of issue of bands just trying to bear the torch for the past. Black metal has a big issue with this as well, but I don't necessarily attribute so much of this issue to black metal specifically, because there are a ton of different micro labels and genres and movements that are always trying to sort of revitalize the genre and take it in a new direction. Plus, I think the big difference with black metal is it's kind of built around that sort of heritage mentality, and so with death metal, it's not necessarily trying to pride itself on just maintaining the past and nothing else and reinforcing what it stood for in the first place. But while every genre sort of gets obsessed with the past in its own way, I think modern death metal bands, specifically the crop of bands that fit the OSDM revival, the old school death metal revivalist bands, I think have kind of gotten caught in this mentality and plateaued in a way to where they're not necessarily able to get more exposure, but they're also not willing to take the genre in any new adventures, and it feels like they're sort of just running their tires in the mud. I've always kind of called it the 20 buck spin curse, because I think that a lot of bands that come from 20 buck spin epitomize this, and I love 20 buck spin and I love a lot of the bands that come from there, but I'm also not going to sit here and not acknowledge that a lot of these bands just try to do nothing but token hold for the past. Where these older bands are kind of allowed to just do their thing and sound the exact same because the standards aren't really being set higher. No one's coming around to sort of raise the bar for what they set. One way that genres progress is throughout time. You're obviously never going to be able to beat the classics, of course, but you find bands that are able to, in some ways, outdo the ones that inspired them in the first place, that can take that influence, that can take that inspiration and admiration that they had for the scene they came from and put it in an interesting way. One of my favorite channels in this niche is Vital Vinyl Vlog, aka Chanel, so I get turned on to a ton of underground death metal and doom and grindcore and stuff from him, but his favorite thing to cover is underground death metal music. And I'm always, of course, looking for new music, not just for myself, but to turn on to you guys, to put in list videos or do reviews of, and I would be lying if I said a lot of this shit just doesn't blend together horrendously. At least when you're talking about a genre like, say, black metal or metalcore, which a lot of times can run the same risks of blending in with each other, there are always little micro things that you can kind of point towards a certain band and be like, they're doing this a little bit different, they're tweaking the formula ever so slightly. But I would be rich if I had a nickel every time I heard some grimy, despondent death metal band that's caking their production through layers of mud and fog and just sounds like grinding riffs and unintelligible death growls with no variation, no diversity, no versatility, and it's not hard to see why the genre isn't progressing for that very reason, in the same way that so many other genres are in the contemporary scene. Even though a lot of black metal fans don't like it, there are so many different micro genres that have come around to revitalize the genre of black metal, whether you're talking about the black gaze movement or what a project like Liturgy does, or if you look at metalcore or deathcore, there are so many different ways that people are constantly reinventing it. Grindcore is always finding a way to go heavier, to go more insane and more primal. So for death metal to kind of be stuck in a point where, and I'm not going to say that there aren't interesting bands or bands that are doing interesting things, but it just seems a little disproportionate with this standard bearing and this flag holding for the past that is bringing the genre down in a lot of ways. Because while people might get excited for a new death metal release, I just feel that hype sort of fizzle away a lot faster than other genres, because it's like bubblegum. You chew all the flavor out and then you spit it out on the ground until you put a new piece of chewing gum in your mouth, and soon that flavor's gone as well. Nothing is seeming standout and exciting, and it's one of the reasons that I I don't really shout out and cover a ton of death metal in the modern sphere because if I'm just being completely honest, as a death metal fan, there's not that many releases that just wow me and that excite me and that give me a reason to listen to it over any host of classic records or modern records from like other little micro genres and offshoots of death metal. My big question for you guys is this something that you've noticed or have dealt with personally? Do you think that death metal is running its wheels through the mud, and if so, what do you think can be done to really help that? Or is this just something I've noticed and it's just a me thing, I guess? You can let me know down in the comment section below. I'd love to discuss it with you guys, agree or disagree. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.